All right. Can everybody hear me all right?
We can hear you.
Yep.
Yes, I can hear you.
All right. And I'm working on sharing my screen. Is my screen coming across all right?
Looks good.
All right. Perfect.
Good.
Yeah. So thanks to the committee for allowing us to come in and share on the Spenard Road Rehabilitation Minnesota to Benson project. My name is Sean Baskey. I'm a project manager with the Department of Transportation, only one of 14. But this is the project that we're moving forward with that obviously you guys are highly interested in because of its great potential for the community. So let's go over a quick history and background real quick. So this is the third phase of a number of other phases. The first phase was a Municipality of Anchorage driven project from Hillcrest Drive to Minnesota Drive. And then phase 2 being Benson to Hillcrest, again, funded by the Municipality of Anchorage. And then our project, which is the third phase, if you want to call it that, in a number of projects. Back in 2007, there was a preliminary engineering report that looked at a 3-lane road diet alternative for the corridor. Back in 2003, a long time ago, there was a highway safety improvement project that explored looking at things. So this discussion has been ongoing for a lot of years, led by different groups, but ultimately, right now, we're talking about the third phase, which is still a Municipality of Anchorage owned and operated section of roadway, but led by the Department of Transportation because it's a federally funded project through AMATS. So, purpose and need of it is a great project, you know, with a lot of opportunities and potential to improve things, but it's rehabilitating the Spenard Road. You know, and really the core of it is improving the safety and functionality of the roadway, increasing a lot of the opportunities for pedestrians, transit, you know, and bicycle, you know, mobility throughout the space in a much safer and better way. So great project for us to be involved with. Department of Transportation, again, leading it with the Municipality of Anchorage being a cooperating, you know, partner in the project. And then, you know, we've got a design team led by Lounsbury that designed this project now. I don't think that anybody really needs to be reminded of what Spenard Road through this section looks like, but just in case, let's go through a quick summary. So we've got a lot of intersections, a slightly winding roadway, you know, 8 to 10,000 cars per day, certainly less than the other segments or the last phases of the project. You know, we've got 4 11-foot travel lanes with very narrow or non-existent sidewalks through much of it. And, you know, with a pretty narrow right of way of 60 feet, trying to fit in a lot of stuff into a little space, with a 35-mile-an-hour speed limit through the section. Just some pictures of people's experiences through the space. Just a very difficult space to have to get through and navigate, and really an uncomfortable feeling for anybody that's using that as an active transportation opportunity. Again, more pictures showing the lack of really much accommodation for anybody to do anything other than driving, and not a comfortable experience for anybody. Okay, so let's quickly look at some things that we've heard, and you guys can read through a number of the things, but you can guess what we've heard. But let's cover some of the active transportation comments that we've heard from people. East-west connectivity is a desire, you know, as we're looking just at Spenard and then also across Minnesota and other things. The overall project limits are, you know, bounded by Minnesota, and really AMATs when they set up the project aren't letting us go west or you know, across Minnesota. So we're pretty limited in the opportunities on the Minnesota side. We've heard many comments about desires for maybe the 3-lane alternative, you know, bike lanes, and comments about bike lanes and protection for them, buffers, raised bike lanes, a number of those kinds of things. We've heard comments about pedestrian signals and crosswalks throughout the space. We've heard comments about, you know, just about everything throughout the corridor. We've had a number of people give us a lot of really detailed feedback about, you know, little tiny sections of it, which is really spectacular, because obviously the users of the roadway, you know, have a much more detailed experience that we can try to address some of those things. There's concerns about the western end and the boundaries and how we end and begin bike lanes and other things, so termination of the facilities. Wanting us to extend across Minnesota. We've heard comments about the sidewalks and need to increase them and other things. Comments about applicability of NACTO and some other things, you know, and those kinds of elements. So there's a lot of comments that we're hearing so far, and we're happy to collect those and then try to, you know, address them as we move forward. There's one of the interesting situations is that we really have a limited space. So what they did on the last phase, you know, they really had basically a 60-foot right of way. And so the question is, how do you fit in all of these features and desired, you know, opportunities to improve the space for all users and find that balance, while also not putting out every business along that space out of business. And so, you know, right-of-way concerns, safety concerns for all users, you know, especially, you know, the improvements for non-motorized facilities and transit and other things. You know, within the last week or two, we've been discussing green infrastructure and LID, you know, implications and what space those may need, or whether or not we comply with those requirements. There's just a lot to fit in a very small space, and this is pretty much the same corridor width as previous sections of the roadway, that last phase. And so, you know, how do we meet everybody's needs? So quickly, we looked at a 3-lane and a 4-lane alternative. We're quickly pivoting from looking at a couple different alternatives to really the desired alternative that we've heard pretty clearly, the desire for a road diet or a 3-lane alternative. And so right now we're kind of penciling all of that out and trying to see what a 3-lane alternative looks like in that space. But, you know, as you can imagine, given that we've got basically the same right-of-way constraints and impacts to neighboring businesses and property owners as the last phase, you know, the previous phase is a good starting point as an overall width and compromise situation. And then where do we go from there, right? And so this provides the 3-lane alternative really provides those spaces, and then the question is what to do with those widths and other things as we move along. So that's pretty much where we're at. with that, we are very early on in the project, and so I think the main question for BPAC is, what went well for the last phase of the project, what kind of improvements appear to be working, what kind of trade-offs does BPAC see as a desirable situation that the team can consider as we move forward. Really, right now, we don't have hard numbers for any of the widths of anything, and we're quickly pivoting into having some of that stuff. But we're interested in hearing feedback on what went well in the last phase, what you see as holes as we move forward. Really, this project is, again, in its infancy, and as the federal process continues, we've got to get through the environmental document before we start finalizing a lot of the details. But one of the main things that needs to be decided as part of the environmental process over the next year to a little over that is what is the spaces that we need space for, right? So bike lanes, pathways, that kind of stuff. Really finalizing a lot of those widths and other things comes as we progress into final design, but maybe not necessarily being hard numbers as we get through the environmental document. So with that, we're open to questions and comments and anything else that anybody wants to share.
I'll go first if I may. This is Matt Johnson.
Go ahead, Matt.
All right. Yeah, so thanks, Sean, for the presentation. Actually, this is the second time I've sat in on a presentation for this project. The first time, I've been to so many different Zoom meetings that they're kind of all running together.
Right.
It was maybe about a month ago. Yeah. And one of the things that that really struck me was when folks were commenting on it, and I know we have an audience here that's sort of open to this kind of thing, but there was so much positivity about the project. Mm-hmm. And about people were really excited about seeing an old road that doesn't work get fixed and all the new infrastructure going into place. And it really struck me that when a few years ago, myself and others in my community council were, I call it, in the thick of it with the folks who were strongly against it. And I won't go into all the nitty gritty about some anecdotes from that time. It was a long time ago. But boy, we've come a long way, and it's so exciting to see. And I guess, so apart from that, then the only thing I would sort of call out is one of the main criticisms of both the Fireweed and the previous Spenard Road reconstruction project was the fact that the Arctic project went so poorly, and therefore we should not turn any dirt on Fireweed or on Spenard. And as everybody knows, the problem with Arctic was as I understand it, the contractors had no complete clause or no deadline by which they needed to complete their work written into their contract. When they started digging up the dirt, they found things that were not anticipated, not uncommon, I guess. They had to rebid it. They had to negotiate. They had to figure out a way to solve those problems that they uncovered without going broke. So there was a contract negotiation, as I understand it. They had another project across town that did have a completion clause. There's probably a better word for it than that. So they just abandoned the project and went to their other one, and it created all kinds of delays and problems and grief. So don't do that, I guess, would be my only recommendation for this project. Don't make sure that the contract is squared away and nobody walks away from it and leaves it half done.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Certainly something that we've heard moving forward, and I'll say that the Department of Transportation puts forward, 30 or 40 projects a year. Certainly this project would likely get one of our, best project engineers. We've got tried and true methodologies for dealing with these tight spaces, and pushing contractors to get done in a timely period. We certainly have substantial completion dates that we hold contractors to. Certainly unforeseen circumstances come up, but then we renegotiate that time in a very timely fashion. And especially on a project like this, likely what would occur is we'd set an aggressive schedule to make sure that we're in and out without lingering longer than the community would desire. Inevitably, you're always there longer than they desire, let's be honest. But the goal is to get in and out and provide those improvements, while also providing a time and a space for a contractor to get the work done well, so there's a lasting improvement for the community. So I appreciate the comments, though. Much appreciated.
Right. Any other questions or comments?
Hi, this is Carol, and my comment is about the Spenard corridor plan and how you're integrating the recommendations in that plan, or using that plan for your planning process.
Sure. So planning documents are considered as we move along. Certainly, it weighs heavily in some of the discussions and alternatives moving forward. When it comes to corridor plans like that, especially, they sometimes don't consider that the time interval that the project is moving forward in. And right now, and what the atmosphere looks like at that point in time. So right now in front of us, we know Spenard Road as it is right now, with the property limits and all of that as we see right now. Sometimes in those planning documents, they imagine things with more space and others. And so we are limited by the space that we've got, maybe a little bit wider, but really, that 60-foot corridor width is what we've got to work with. And so trying to find a balance between all the desires of the community, stakeholders, users, those neighboring businesses, and what's set forth in those plans for desires for an overall streetscape and things is everything that the project has to balance. So planning documents come along and they look at what they desire moving forward, but then a project comes along and it has to deal with the constraints that are in front of it right then at that point, and the constraints provided by the funding apparatus that is there. And this is funded by the federal government, and so there's certain things that we have to adhere to. We've had a number of conversations with the Spenard Community Council about some of those constraints, about how this federally funded project is kind of different than the last phase of the project, because that was a Municipality of Anchorage funded project. And so there's a different look and a feel associated with a federally funded project than that last phase, because it had improvements onto private property, for instance. So
Lindsay, I believe you have your hand up.
Hi, Lindsay.
Yeah, hi. This is Lindsay. Just wanted to be brief because we have had lots of conversations already with Sean and his team, a lot of folks that are on the meeting tonight, and just appreciate as the Spenard Community Council is going to be, at the table every step of the way in this. And to Carol's question, we'll be referring back to the Spenard Corridor Plan and recognizing that this is the Spenard Road, and so we want to make sure that it is bringing a lot of the principles, vision, look and feel, the different uses from that document into light. And so we're just committed to making that happen as best we can, and trying to decipher what those constraints are and how to make this the best roadway for all users. And right now it's just it's in bad shape, and so we'll be really excited to see the improvements happen, maybe in the near future, and just appreciate the time. And I'm sure we'll have you back to provide more comments as the BPAC as this moves on.
Absolutely. Yeah, and this is absolutely not the last time that you'll see or hear from the team. And, you know, feel free to reach out to any one of us, and we'll absolutely stay involved with the community council, BPAC, and, you know, user groups and anybody else that reaches out to us that wants us to come and talk about anything.
All right. Any other questions or comments for Sean?
I think one thing that I missed, you know, was really the overall timeline for the project. And so because this is a federally funded project, there's, you know, it's a slow process to get through because you can't really run things in parallel. And so, you know, you guys have seen us deliver projects in the past. You know, we've and so this one is no different. It's one of the more significant AMATS projects. And I'll just say that, you know, you won't see us out there until likely at least after 2025. And that's really assuming that a lot of things go well. And inevitably with a project like this that has so many moving parts and so many interested parties and so many property owners to have to work and negotiate with, and, you know, especially following the federal process, this will be a long process. And really, you know, I've heard a number of people say that, you know, I'm trying to manage expectations on a number of fronts, you know, whether it's the space that we're trying to deal with, or that we have, and how we can provide those improvements to the best of our ability using the federal funded source that we've got, or the timelines. And really, you know, that's my job as project manager, is to try to deliver, you know, that hard hitting news, so that way, you know, I'm not over promising and under delivering to the community. And so, you know, I just wanted to share that message that we are really optimistic about the great improvements that we can do for the community, but ultimately, you know, it's going to be a long journey to get there. And, you know, it will not look like the last phase of Spenard Road for a number of reasons, but mainly because it's a federally funded project and they had different tools in their toolbox as a municipality of Anchorage funded project. But likely within the back of pathway to the back of pathway, we can likely do a lot of that same form and function. We just can't go up to the doorstops of some of those businesses. So,
CB, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, hey, thanks. So I'm the executive director at the Center for the Blind, and which is just down the street on Spenard off the road. And I'm curious if, because maybe it's federally funded, if there's any planning, or if someone can educate me on the cost difference of talking crosswalks. It sounded like there was 4 or 5 intersections that are getting upgraded. Is that ever come to light to anybody?
I'll say that because this is a municipality of Anchorage owned and operated facility, and we're working with them, that ultimately they'll be the ones to answer that question and what facilities there. I believe we've received some comments from, you know, some of your team, and I think we are either currently trying to respond to that, or maybe we even did today. And so I think there's some avenues to have some dialogue about some of that, and what potential opportunities there are. But really, you know, it comes down to what is it that the operating agency and you know, is available for.
Thanks, Sean. We're a small demographic, and I realize it's a small voice, but it's good to be heard. So thank you.
No, it's an absolutely, I mean, it's an absolutely important voice in the community, and you know, we all take it very seriously, whether at the Department of Transportation or at the municipality of Anchorage.
All right. Any other questions or comments for Sean? Well, thank you, Sean. That was informative. As somebody who bikes that road a lot, leaving the section to the north and going to the south, it's like you're on a different planet. So this is exciting.
Yeah, it is.
It's at least it's on the radar now.
Yeah, and it's a great project to be working on, and we're really excited for the opportunities that we've got in front of us to make lasting improvements for the entire community for decades to come. It's a really exciting project to be a part of.
Well, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
With that, the project of Title 21, we move to the end of this section. So next would be our update on DOT bicycle and pedestrian planning from Julius.
All right. Hi, everyone. Can you hear and see me?
Hi, Julia. Sorry, I just shared my screen. Let me undo that.
That looks more like the agenda than Julius.
No, I just want to show everyone the agenda one more time. See where we are. Okay. There. Yes, we can see you. Thank you so much
Great.
for coming today.
Well, thank you for inviting me. So Joni invited me to present a little bit about myself and the work that I do. My name is Julius Dolphin. I actually work for DOT and PF, but I'm based in Juneau. So I'm not in Anchorage, and I'm calling in from rainy Juneau today. And I would like to share a little bit more about what I do, and to tag on to that, I would like to share a little bit about the Alaska Statewide Active Transportation Plan, if that would be okay, which is a plan that sort of sums up a lot of activities in the recommendations that I work with. So with that, I will give you a brief presentation because I want to allow for questions and answers as well. So I work 50% as the statewide bike and pedestrian coordinator, and 50% as a rural transit planner here with DOT. So transit and bike ped is something that I work interchangeably with throughout the day, and but I want to share a little bit more about the statewide active transportation plan. I've worked about with DOT about 10 months now, and I was very fortunate that this plan was sort of in print when I started my job. The master plan was completed in 2019, and I just want to share briefly a little bit of the background of the plan. So there was a general need for a plan update. The previous plan was published in 1995, and of course we all know that a lot of things can happen to biking and walking in 20 years. So there was a great need for an updated plan. There was also the realization from DOT and PF's perspective that we had more folks that were using non-motorized facilities, and by facilities I mean sidewalks, side paths, multi-use paths. So a lot more people using the non-motorized facilities. There was also an unmet need for safe streets, and Alaska topped the list for number of fatalities per 10,000 commuters, which really shows the need for safer streets and a safer environment to both commute and recreate. The non-motorized facilities and networks are key in our economy, not only our outdoor economy, but our infrastructure economy, and also to attract tourists to the state. And internally, we had a need to create a document that focused on the previous administration, USD Secretary Anthony Fox, in his initiative for safer people and safer streets. So the vision of the plan, and this is the statewide plan, and the vision is that people in Alaska will enjoy equitable, accessible, safer walking and biking opportunities as an integral part of daily life. And the plan will address the current conditions and future changes to set out the policy framework to foster transportation systems that meet the current and future needs of walkers and bikers across Alaska. So it's sort of a blend of policy and action items. I'll get to some of the action items or recommendations that came out of the plan, and which I'm working with. And you can see here in the picture how it sort of fits in with DOT's other modal plans. You have the long-range transportation plan or a long-range plan, and then you have the different modal plans in this multimodal little tile here, which sort of feeds down to different corridors and area plans and metropolitan plans, and of course the STIP. All right. So briefly, the plan is organized in 9 chapters. Chapter 1 and 3 is an introduction that determines the process of public and stakeholder involvement, the vision, goals, and areas and objectives and performance measures. Chapter 4 and 5 talks about existing conditions and planning considerations for active transportation in Alaska. And Chapter 9 goes into this more, future recommendations and integrations with other policies, plans, and programs, as well as determining the next steps and investment decisions and considerations. So the plan can be used by a diverse variety of people. And in different ways as well. The goal was for both government and elected officials to be able to use it, for DOT to be able to use this internally, and for other state agencies to be able to use it, but also for local municipalities and MPOs, as well as other advocates and other involved folks that want to work with policy development on a local and regional and state level. And one example that I want to bring up that sort of correlates a little bit with the Alaska Statewide Active Transportation Plan is AMAT's non-motorized plan. There are a lot of things that are a lot of synergies in between the two plans, and I think the statewide plan outlays more of a statewide perspective where we want to go in sort of with common goals and common areas, and of course your AMAT's plan takes it down to a very local level and specifies more of what the needs and challenges and also goals are for the local communities. So the plan can hopefully connect the regional and local levels to the statewide levels and needs, and sort of showing a clear direction on where we want to go with biking and walking in Alaska. So the plan has several goal areas, as you can see down here. One is safety, one is health, one is maintenance and system preservation, one is connectivity, and one is economic development. And as you can see here in the this is at the very back end of the document that I'd be happy to share with anyone that would be interested in having a look at it as well. But it shows the goals and recommendations in the way back of the document, and you can see what sort of area goal it is, what priority it is, what existing policies and procedures, and the recommendations of the plan, but also what our role in DOT is. So it outlines, I think it's about 14 or 15 different goals, and prioritizes them as well. And to sort of guide DOT's work and support with the plan and with active transportation in Alaska. So as you can see here, some of these recommendations are support driven. We have, for example, a safe passing distance here. We don't have a statewide policy on safe passing distance. There's been a significant, I would say, strive towards creating a statewide active transportation coalition, which is actually currently looking at implementing or adapting Alaska Administrative Code to consider adding a safe passing distance. And that code is now making its way through different policies, policy committees, and hopefully it will make it up in the chain of command up to the commissioners level, and we'll get it passed. So one of the outcomes with this plan, and I'm not gonna take credit at all for this, but I was extremely happy that we saw this, prioritization where we really saw, where we needed to go in some ways and what we can do. So I together with some other folks, we put together this statewide coalition to sort of work on more the policies that are currently on, the policies and regulations that us as state workers can't participate in some ways. Our role is to support their work and what they're doing. So I'm providing technical and technical assistance essentially to this group, who's working on, among other things, the codes. So that is one outcome of sort of this plan, but also one of the things that I'm currently working on. So another, I want to just share this with you guys, that there's no one that can do this, alone. And of course, BPAC is a shining example of this, bringing together a wide range of stakeholders that are passionate about active transportation and want to achieve change for a safer and more equitable transportation system is key. And I put this little quote here, being true to DOT as well. It's a Henry Ford quote, but coming together is a beginning, keeping together is progress, but working together is success. And I truly believe that is the case. So my 2 cents of this presentation and of the Alaska Statewide Active Transportation Plan is that in order for us to take it off the shelf and into the streets, we need to work together. And 2 projects that I'm sort of working on right now, that could use collaboratively, that we can work with, or that we have synergies with, is an inventory of state-owned non-motorized facilities. So we want to establish a network connectivity and address facility gaps to be able to look at the active transportation facility network, essentially. And this will also help, hopefully, folks that are looking at where to prioritize projects, perhaps. It would also hopefully look at where where M&O should prioritize snow removal and snow or gravel sweeping, or whatever. Because right now we actually don't. DOT doesn't have an inventory of state-owned non-motorized facilities, and the hope is that this map will be a public layer, so the public can use it as well to sort of plan their route or to find a low stress network where they can go to their everyday destinations. And the second process that project that I'm working on right now is establishing a process for collecting non-motorized traffic data counts. This is really important because as of now, we have DOT has sporadic sort of counts. We do different counts at intersections or when we're sort of wanting to know more about a specific project or a specific intersection, a specific facility. But establishing a baseline for active transportation travel and being able to know the behaviors and be able to plan accordingly would be very, very helpful. So I am working with both some of our field offices, but also the traffic data department here at headquarters as well, to see how we can start to collect non-motorized traffic data. With that, I would like to open up for some questions. I know this was a brief presentation. I didn't want to linger too long because I know that some, if not most of you, have also helped with the implementation of and provided feedback on the statewide active transportation plan. So I just want to open it up for folks to for questions.
Carol, you've got your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah. Hey, Julius. This is Carol Fink. Just a thought with Vision Zero. Pre-pandemic, I was working with Andrew, and they did some interesting work. Andrew's on right now about pedestrian behaviors with observations, people standing on corners and observing, and then looking over videos. And so pre-pandemic, we have a little bit. I think we did that on Minnesota at 2 or 3 locations, perhaps. But that might be interesting for you to take a look at. And Minnesota is a state-owned road.
Yeah, thanks for pointing that out. Yeah, I've also looked at some other states, and Minnesota DOT is a couple of I wouldn't say light years ahead, but they have a really good data collection program, and they have a data analyst that solely focuses on active transportation data, and they're using that data in their day-to-day planning. So, and any data, that we get, we would hopefully be able to share with the public as well, so anyone can sort of extract that.
Any other questions, comments for Julius? All right. Thank you, Julius.
Well, thank you. And I'll just link to the plan in the chat box along with my contact information. So yeah, and I'm available for give me a call or send me an email, or if you want to bounce some ideas, I'm available. And it was great to talk to all of you, and best of luck with your projects, upcoming projects. It's always exciting to hear about.
And thank you for joining us from beautiful downtown Juneau.
Thank you.
Our next item is an update on the non-motorized plan from AMET.
All right, thanks. And thanks, Julius. Thanks again for coming today. I'm just going to do a real quick update on the non-motorized plan. All of you are aware, hopefully, that we are having a work session on Friday from noon to 1 to go over the non-motorized plan and submit some comments. So hopefully you've had some time now to look at the document and think about some comments you might want to discuss for Friday. So Friday is also the deadline that we set for having comments submitted. So I'm hoping to get a list of comments sort of gathered from the committee on Friday, and then we can type those up in a formal email or something, and or just send them to me via email, or I can take notes, whatever, and we'll get those in our table. But basically, our common response or our public review period has been going since January 4th. So we had an open house last week, I think, or the week before. I'm losing track now, but open house went great, and we have gotten a lot of great comments. I've given presentations at, I'm guessing, at probably about 8 or 9 community council meetings by now. So I've been making the rounds on that, and yeah, we've got a lot of great feedback. So anyways, excited to hear this committee's feedback. And then once that's done, our comment period's over, we will be moving towards getting the document in front of the Technical Advisory Committee in April, and then on to the Anchorage Assembly after that, and then on to the Policy Committee for final review and adoption. So we're fingers crossed, maybe we'll have this plan adopted by July or so, maybe June or July. Any rate, that's all on the non-motorized plan. I'm gonna sort of skip over any other things that we've got on the docket today, because I want to make enough time for the next presentation, which is, and I'm just gonna share my screen again, but we have Tom Davis here, who is presenting on parking regulations associated with Title 21. And I think this might take a little bit, so I just want to leave enough time for him. Craig, did you have any other things you wanted to say about projects or things that you're working on that the committee needed to know about?
Not right now that I can think of.
Okay, perfect. All righty then, people. Here we go. Tom, take it away. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to turn my camera off.
Okay. Thanks, Joni. A quick mic check here. Does my mic sound okay? Seem all right?
Sounds clear.
Sounds
Yeah.
good to me.
Oh, wonderful. Well, thanks for having us this evening. I'm here with Elizabeth Appleby. We're from the land use side of the house over in the municipal planning department. And Elizabeth and I are here to give you a heads up about an upcoming change to our zoning regulations for development on properties along the roadways that we believe has a lot of influence and impacts on our transportation system. We'd like to give you a brief overview of the AMAT's plan policies that these potential changes to the zoning regulations carry out. These are action items in the MTP and on the non-motorized plans side of the house. And then our ultimate goal is to get the BPAC feedback on these proposed changes. Basically kind of give some, Elizabeth walk you through a few individual items this evening, get some initial thoughts, but then to follow up later with more comment on this change. The most land consumptive, expensive zoning requirement for development in this town is the parking requirements, and that's actually also where zoning requirements cross over into all the other activities of the municipality and the community. And there is probably no part of our land use regulations that has as much impact on transportation and accessibility as the Title 21 on-site requirements for how people get to and access a property. Right now, there's a lot of parking requirements for that. We have come to recognize that we have a little bit of cleanup to do on our side of the house, that we, over the past couple of decades, have sent Anchorage into a kind of a negative cycle with respect to how much parking we require and all the impacts that has on the housing market, on what developers are asked to build, the look and feel of your community and how it functions. Most especially with housing recently. We've heard a lot about housing issues in town, affordability, development costs, parking requirements on the property next to the roadway. Those are somewhere between 10 to 30% of the hard costs of a multi-unit development and can significantly drive up rents, purchase prices. And if it looks like Anchorage has a lot of parking lots, it's probably because it's true. Each parking space, you can tell, occupies a significant portion of land compared to even this 2-bedroom apartment. So we have land use plans and goals in Anchorage 2040 being the latest rendition of our comprehensive plan for the Anchorage Bowl. It has some direct goals about how Anchorage is to continue to grow and accommodate housing and economic development. And the pretty picture down on the lower right envisions the darker colors, the kinds of buildings that would infill into areas that are currently either smaller buildings or parking lots, leftover spaces. But to do that, we need to use parking more efficiently, and then secondly, begin to emphasize some more active alternative ways to access our properties, including with the transit and the bicycle and pedestrian access. And our land use plan has a land use map. I guess the biggest change in that map for us has been, for the first time, we're beginning to allow the zoning code to recognize and treat our older urban, more pedestrian-oriented, transit-served neighborhoods differently when we decide what to require or what to incentivize for a builder, a developer, a property. And so the some of the neighborhoods on this map are near downtown, where my cursor is. And these neighborhoods tend to have a street grid, tend to be more sidewalks and more transit service than outlying parts of town. These are also our redevelopment infill policy areas that our plan identifies. And so this project is attempting to carry out that part of our city plan. We'll see how it carries out in a moment, the AMAT's plans, but it is carrying out several specific actions from Anchorage 2040. We'll leave these slides with with you all, but just a high level, we're proposing to have lower parking requirements in those urban neighborhoods that we just saw on the maps. That that we would streamline a process by which developers can, if they meet certain criteria, get site-specific reductions to their parking requirement. For example, if they provide extra bicycle parking, affordable housing, or whatnot. And then on the driveways side of the house, down below, to seek to reduce the width of some driveways that are coming off the streets, where we believe that that maybe a 3 to 4, 5, 6 unit multifamily development doesn't really need to be required to have, you know, a commercial scale 24-foot wide driveway cutting across the sidewalk. And just to give you kind of a visual on some of these highlights here. So when we talk about area specific lower parking requirements, first and foremost, we're talking about some of those older neighborhoods here. The map in the lower left is encompasses Fairview and South Addition in addition to downtown. And the map up over upper right is Mountain View. And that would be looking at calibrating lower parking requirements to match our data about the lower parking demand in those areas. And even, excuse me, extending further out, the city's transit supportive development corridors that our plans call for, and that Public Transportation Department has already invested 15-minute bus headways, frequent bus service on, are also areas where we are looking to reduce parking requirements again by a significant amount, so that these areas would have lower parking requirements than the rest of town to reflect A, the lower amount of parking demand, and B, the policy intent for these areas to absorb more housing and become more pedestrian oriented. Quickly, this is a wonderful chart of an expanded menu of ways that developers can get further reductions in their automobile parking requirement. It's a long laundry list, and I think the biggest change is that while some of these exist today under the current Title 21, you can ask for a parking reduction for affordable housing, for example. But what's changing here, first of all, is that on the right-hand column, we're proposing that up to a certain percentage reduction, if the applicant provides one of these items on this menu list, if they meet some criteria along with that item, that they will get a non-discretionary review approval to get up to that certain percentage parking reduction. Today, they have to go through the traffic engineer and sometimes do a parking study. So we think that getting these discretionary reductions changed to just a straight non-discretionary reduction down by the amount of percentage reduction that the data tells us that parking demand generally falls. We think parking demand actually does fall by 30% when you have affordable rental units. That will really encourage people to take advantage of these options. And also non-discretionary reductions for shared parking, for example, sharing office or commercial parking with housing, where they're using the same parking spaces at different times of day. Then near to the end of our overview of these changes is that we aren't simply just reducing parking and reducing the amount of parking. We understand that people are still getting to the site, that Title 21 is going to shift its emphasis from solely satisfying the goal for access between land uses with this one technique. I know there are some walkway requirements in current code, but that we're going to begin to look at some of these other techniques for getting people access to the site as well in the code. So citywide, taking a look at our current bike parking requirements in Title 21 and kicking them up a notch using the guidance in the non-motorized plans. And additionally, kicking up the design standards and expectations for the design of bike parking that's required. And secondly, in those neighborhoods that we mapped earlier that you saw, to kick them up a little bit higher even. Have a lower parking requirement in these neighborhoods, so a bit higher bike parking requirement. A couple other requirements in those neighborhoods, looking at encouraging buildings to be closer to the street, not behind a parking lot. And also making sure that if there are any breaks in the sidewalk due to driveways, that the sidewalk is restored to its surface, level grade or 2% slope at maximum, and not be broken up by a new driveway curb cut slope that the pedestrian must navigate in those neighborhoods. And then beefing up some of the strings attached, providing strings attached for getting those parking reductions. So really quick, like here. So if you look at the second to the bottom bullet on this page, it's I think it's objective 3I-1. It's an action item. It says work with the municipal planning department to implement the Anchorage 2040 land use plan, to increase transit supportive land development consistent with the plan. But there are a number of other actions more specific to the MTP that it's calling for. And we believe that this project is directly implementing these actions from the MTP. The last two bullets from action 6F-1 and 6F-3 are two areas where we are definitely working to increase the requirements for pedestrian amenities, providing more parking reductions for walkways, enhanced walking environments. And then specifically action 6F3 at the bottom. This action is we're directly implementing from the 2040 MTP. And we believe this does directly reduce, over time, congestion. With the non-motorized plan, we're looking at several policies in the draft plan, and also reviewing the design guidelines for long-term bicycle parking, as well as the short-term bicycle parking in the draft plan. And there are some other non-motorized plans that are existing adopted that also have policies that seem to be what we're implementing. I'm going to leave off here, connect you with Elizabeth, who will walk you through some specific elements of the bicycle plan, and some of the specific recommendations that it had, and then walk you through some of the kinds of questions we would like to ask of AMATS and for any guidance that the BPAC may have for us in those questions. So take it away, Elizabeth. Elizabeth, Senior Planner. She's one of a 6-person interagency team on this project, and has been focusing on the bicycle standards. So go ahead, Elizabeth.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Tom, for the introduction. Someone could, can you hear me all right?
I sure can.
Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, so as Tom said, I'm in current planning Tom is in Long Range, but we overlap on some projects. And I've been with the municipality for about 6 months. I worked for the city of Kenai for about 2.5 years, but prior to that, I lived in Anchorage for about 4 years. And actually, before that, I had a summer in Anchorage where I didn't bring a car up because I'm originally from Wisconsin. So I got to know the bike system in Anchorage very well from that summer because I had to. Anyway, so the bicycle plan, it's from 2010, but I wanted to point out that there is a specific policy under Goal 5 that says review zoning codes for bicycle parking to include requirements for bicycle parking in well-monitored, lit, and secure areas that are protected from the elements and convenient to the entrances of buildings. Tom, can you hit the next slide? And so these are a few more things from the 2010 bicycle plan. So I have some action item recommendations and bicycle parking design recommendations. So what we're looking back for feedback from you all tonight is, are these action items and design recommendations still important for changes we're looking to make in Title 21? So the idea is we want to make changes in code or suggest changes in codes that follow the goals and policies identified in plans. So we're looking just for a little feedback on this one because it is from 2010 to make sure these are still relevant. And then if they are, if there's any that stand out as being more or less important. So I guess does anyone have thoughts on that? So we've got develop requirements for short-term and long-term parking, and long-term would ideally be sheltered somehow from the elements, either could be in a garage or just like any sort of structure that would cover the bikes. We've got secure bike parking enclosures and parking garages, identify appropriate bike parking standards for different zoning districts and land uses. And then under design recommendations, we've got design specifications for bike racks, requiring access aisles of at least 5 feet wide behind bicycle parking. I've also read things too about spaces on racks so that people can access them from the side. We've got separation from auto parking and requiring or incentivizing bicycle support facilities such as showers and personal lockers. So thoughts on these? Matt Johnson, looks like you have your hand up. If you want to go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, just a clarification on the second bullet under the top policy, number 5.1, require secure bike parking enclosures. Would the enclosure be secure? Like, would it be a locked room? I guess I don't think so. And what does secure mean? Does it mean secure from having your bike stolen, or secure in terms of lighting and visibility for the individual?
Yeah, to me, secure means some sort of lock, I guess, when I read it, but there could be multiple ways of providing some way to lock up your bike. But I mean, lighting's a good point too, because that adds to security, but I was thinking that specifically meant some sort of lock.
Okay.
Or ability to lock your bike.
For me, I know that I like to have my lock with me because I want to lock it at different locations. But then I see that there have been some bike storage lockers where in some way you have a iPhone app or similar, and you can access it and leave your bike, just put it in the locked enclosure. So my guess is that for a Title 21 thing, it would be something rather inexpensive and self-serve, like a bike rack with covering and well lit and visibility from all around and no hiding places would be my guess. What is secure to my mind.
Yeah.
Sorry, that last sentence made any sense? Like, it was kind of a run-on sentence.
No, that did. Thanks for bringing that up. I've seen the metal like bike enclosures that you're referring to. I guess for code, because we're focusing on multi-family developments too. I guess I was thinking it like a secure garage could be like one where you need a key pass to access or something like that. So maybe we'll look into that more of like what secure means, because you could provide security in a variety of ways.
Yeah, that's a good point. That it could be just a keypad in a garage-like enclosure that's part of the unit, the residential unit, the multi-family unit, what have you. So.
Yeah, I see. Carol has her hand up. If you want to go ahead.
Yeah, thanks for this. I think that these are all still very important concepts and ideas. As far as the details, I can't really speak to that. I don't know if 5 foot is industry standard, but knowing that, I think these are helpful, having places. I'm thinking secure bike parking, like at the Frontier Building. We have a cage available at South Central Foundation. They have cages there, and they can use their key card that gets them into the building, gets them into the cage. People additionally lock their bike in those cages, but the cage is locked, and then they lock their bike as well. And it's well lit, and the location of bike parking is important too. You don't want the bike parking, too far away. If you can get it up front, I think that would be something important to add to this.
Okay.
Close to the door, and that incentivizes people to bike. So these are great.
Awesome.
Hey, Elizabeth, before you, this is Craig. There is a question in the chat, if you see that.
Oh, let's see. Let me pull up the chat.
Comment from the public. Is it possible to have safer bike parking areas at shopping areas such as grocery stores?
It's definitely possible. We could, I guess I'm not sure when I think of like a Fred Meyer, I'd have to think about the locked storage, because we could require more like bike racks put in. I'm honestly not sure about having like an enclosed storage, but maybe covered and well lit we could do. I don't know, Tom, what are your thoughts on that question?
Yeah, I mean, seeing that some of the bike parking that's out there at some of our existing grocery stores, we can certainly do better. Yeah, I guess with you, I think we just take a look at that and see how that can be improved. That'd be probably fall under mostly for employees. There might be a long-term parking that's the locked and sheltered type space, but a lot of short-term users. I think that's how I interpreted the plans here, that there's short-term parking, bike parking, maybe itself should have some shelter, but certainly more space and security. So yeah, take a look at that. I am taking notes, by the way, Elizabeth.
Awesome, thank you.
So, as you're going on. So.
I guess anything else on these before I move on to the next slide, and we'll definitely note to take a closer look at what we could do code-wise to have secure bike parking, including at grocery stores and other shopping areas. All right, then the next slide shows current code for bicycle parking. So we do actually have a definition for a bicycle parking space. So it defines it as either a rack or locker used for parking and securing one bicycle. We do have some bicycle parking requirements. And I did just see the long comment in the chat. I'll definitely take a look at that. But the bicycle parking requirements we have are 4 bicycle parking spaces or 3% of the number of required auto parking spaces, whichever is greater. And there are some basic design standards, so visible or directional signage located closer than vehicle parking to the primary entrance, minimum 6 feet long, 2 feet wide, remain clear of mud and snow, and cannot obstruct pedestrian walkways or building access. So we do at least have some basic requirements in code already. The parking reduction we have so the idea is if you provide bicycle spaces over what you're required to provide, you can get a reduction on your auto parking spaces. In order to do that, the traffic engineer has to approve that, though. And also, each automobile parking space must be replaced by at least 6 bicycle parking spaces. And the last one is just that they have to be separated with bollards or other physical buffer. But this is what we have currently, so this is sort of our starting place. Next slide, Tom. So these slides are a bit conceptual because there are some of the changes that we're thinking of making. We're still working on the internal draft and then the subsequent public hearing draft that would be shared that has the exact code language that's being proposed. But we're looking for input while we're still writing or coming up with a proposed idea for discussion. So anyway, one of them would be that requirement to provide long-term sheltered bike spaces. And we're not sure at this point if that would be requiring a certain percentage of bike spaces to be covered or just always requiring a certain number of covered spaces. And so the covering could be done in a bunch of different ways. If it's in a garage, then it's already covered or some sort of indoor thing. But I just pulled a few quick photos from the internet of just samples of the ways people have offered covered bike parking. Maybe I'll just go through all of the suggestions and then I'll take comments on these, if you think some are not good ideas or if you already have something, if one looks really good or if just any sort of feedback for what we're looking at doing. Next slide, Tom. So we have an additional reduction in required motor vehicle parking for providing extra bike spaces. So I mentioned that in order to get any reduction in your vehicle parking in exchange for providing more bike parking, you have to have approval by the traffic engineer. So we're looking at proposing to make some of these reductions non-discretionary, which means if you do them, then you just automatically get the reduction. So that would give some certainty for developers. So you wouldn't need that specific concurrence of the traffic engineer to get the reduction. The traffic engineer would still be looking at the overall parking lot layout, but that specific reduction would just be automatic or non-discretionary. Next slide.
Oh, sorry.
That's okay. And then we're also looking at requiring more of a minimum number of bike parking spaces and storage. So I pulled up this slide because I guess just to increase requirements for some of the larger apartment complexes for how they provide bike parking, because sometimes there isn't maybe there's a personal storage unit, but there's no separate area just for bikes. So I thought that could be something that we put forward. I think those are all the slides on sort of our ideas of what we're looking at to do. Oh, here we go. There was one more. So this would be, we already do have the requirement for a sign, but we could maybe increase that to point out where bike parking is, spacing requirements or setbacks for bike racks. So that's the image on the right. I just pulled that. It had some recommended setbacks for setting up bike parking. So we could do some sort of requirement so people can more easily reach bike racks. And then I just threw out there because this happened in Kenai. So I worked for the city of Kenai, and this wasn't a direct partnership with the city. There's still a local bike advocacy group that took this on, but the city did still pay for or sponsor a couple bike racks that they put in their municipal parks. So this would not necessarily be a code change, but I just put it out there because it was a successful program, and with the city of Soldotna and the city of Kenai, they each bought some bike racks, and then local businesses sponsored the rest, and high school students made them. Anyway, feedback on like the proposed changes we have here, or any additional thoughts on the potential on the code changes? And maybe we could just show this slide, because I think this is the last slide of the presentation, and we can just open it up to general discussion. This is our timeline. So we're currently in pre-consultation, so that's why we're here tonight. And then we should have a community discussion draft for public review in April and May. And then it would then there would be a public hearing draft for review, and then it would go to Planning and Zoning Commission for a recommendation, and then the Assembly would be the one to adopt an ordinance to change the code. So we're still pretty early in the process. So we're just trying to get a discussion draft finalized. So thanks for having us here to give a presentation and for the feedback tonight. I'm just going to read the chat while we're closing our presentation. So looks like the chat talked about how the benefit of having locked cages instead of just like a rack where locks can be cut, and improving lighting and cameras are good, but it's not enough on their own, and that a rack with some sort of enclosure offers better security. So thanks for that comment in the chat.
So Carol, I think, had your hand up.
Yeah, one more strategy is, and I'm not sure how you pull this off, but allowing bicycles to be brought into businesses or office spaces. I'm not sure that's a code issue, but that would help. And then I just sort of have a thought about some of the issues we've had with the bus stop areas that we have around town, and sometimes our homeless population uses them as a shelter because we don't have enough shelter for homeless people in Anchorage. And so just kind of looking at some of those design elements, they looked kind of inviting to hunker down in, to stay warm. And that could be an unintended consequence of this policy that could upset some of our Anchorage residents. So I don't have a solution. I'm just throwing it out there to be kind of prepared.
Okay.
For that argument.
Chelsea and then Lindsay had their hands up.
Thanks, Daryl. Thank you both for this presentation. All the presentations tonight were super helpful. This one I wasn't super aware of before you guys came and presented, so I really appreciate that. And I do not hold the Bike Anchorage seat on this committee, but I am on the board of Bike Anchorage, and it would be great if we could chat with you all at a different time and maybe have you all present perhaps to our advocacy committee, or at least, have some sort of conversation back and forth there. I think the folks on that committee would provide some really valuable feedback as well. And I'd be happy to be a connector for that. Thank you.
Thank you. We would appreciate that.
Hi, and this is Lindsay. And like Chelsea, I really appreciated this presentation. And I just need to digest it a bit more because I'm not as familiar with our Title 21 parking requirements now and what some proposed changes are. But I'd be really interested in thinking this through, especially on the Spenard Road project that we were just talking about. There are concerns that parking for some of the business and properties might be impacted by upgrading the roadway for all users, and there could be some really great opportunities to encourage more active transportation parking options along this stretch. And so just thinking through that scenario might be helpful and help inform the Spenard Community Council and businesses so that we can be prepared for this, project that's in the works. So if there's opportunity to dig more into this or have, it looks like a lot of the comments in the chat are also about just smaller group conversations to dig into this, that'd be appreciated.
Yeah, we would certainly appreciate that. We thought that perhaps, given that there is a lot of, some of a blindside information coming at you tonight, that we might, Elizabeth and I might follow this up with a bit more of a kind of a bulleted questionnaire, like maybe list that in plain English of some of these code changes, and any feedback that BPAC members could provide. We would appreciate it for staff to help us think these things through as we develop a public draft. So
yeah, that sounds great, and something that I could take some more time to look at and formulate some comments on. So I'd appreciate that.
Okay, will do.
Thanks.
Any other comments or questions for Tom and Elizabeth?
Mr. Chair, I don't know if they want to answer them now or later, but there are several other comments in the chat. So
yeah, I was typing in the chat a little bit. So there's another comment on looks like some design. Please don't use the picture designs. Oh, I see. They didn't like the ones where the bikes hang by the front wheel because it's it's hard to lift up the bikes. I can see that too if someone has a fat tire bike too, because it's a bit heavier. And then we have a comment that signs pointing towards bike parking would be super helpful. It's hard to find sometimes. And then there's a last comment on how to give additional public input. And so I was typing some things into the chat. So we don't have a project website yet, but we should in the next week or so. And then that's where we would eventually post the community discussion draft and other project updates as it moves forward. We're also planning to present at the FCC. So that's the Federation of Community Councils. So every community council is supposed to have a representative that reports back from there. We were trying to get on the March agenda. It's we were told it's pretty full already. So we might just have to make an announcement in March and then do a presentation in April. And then individual community councils could also request a presentation from us. So that's what's coming up for ways to be informed about the project. In the meantime, you can send me an email and I can keep track of it to as we move along. I can just send a quick email when we have the website available.
Any other questions or comments? I wanted to circle back real quickly to a comment that Carol made. Tom and Elizabeth, I think as you look at requiring businesses and property developers to have covered bike storage areas, you really need to think about design. I've lived in Fairview for 34 years. We have multiple people mover routes that qualify for covered bus shelters, but they've all been taken out because they were used as toilets and party areas and sleeping areas. So as we look at requiring people to have these elements, businesses and developers on their property, we really need to think about the design elements.
Gotcha. Thanks. That's a really good comment.
Yeah.
Any other comments or questions? All right. Thanks, Tom and Elizabeth. Tom, it was nice to hear your voice.
Yeah, it's good to hear you too, Daryl.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone.
All right, thank you.
Right. I believe that takes care of our general information. Committee comments. Any comments from committee members? You guys are too quiet tonight. All right. Do we have any additional comments from the public? I think there's a little bit of a lag if somebody's typing. All right. Let's give it a couple of seconds to see if we get any comments from the public. Joni or Craig, any last thoughts?
Not for me, just a reminder that we are moving forward with our committee meeting on Friday to go over the non-motorized plan. So go over the plan if you haven't already. This is a great opportunity to comment and say what you like, don't like, wish you saw more of, or things we need to take out. We are open to suggestions. So.
And any committee members that can't make the Friday meeting, be sure and email your comments and thoughts to Joni.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Daryl.
And it looks like we don't have any more comments from the public. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
Daryl, this is Eric. I move to adjourn.
Do we have a second?
This is Carol. I'll second.
Any opposition to adjourning? All right, thank you all. What a great meeting, some great presentations. I don't know about you, but my head is about to explode. So much great information to think. Nice to see everyone.
Have a great evening, folks. Thank you.
Thanks.
Have a
Thanks,
good night.
Joni and
Thanks, guys.
Bye, guys.
Thanks, everybody. Bye.